I've talked a lot about university being a bit of an ordeal for me, but I've never really explained why. And that's partly because I wanted to be able to give it as a whole story. I didn't think it would be constructive talking about it necessarily when I was in it, for me or for anybody watching, because I couldn't give you a conclusion. But also because I didn't want to get kicked out. But I've graduated now, and so the time has come to share my university experience. So I'm going to start at the beginning of everything and just work my way through, but I do just want to make it really clear that I'm not trying to preach or trying to say that my way of doing university was better than anything else, because it's just the way that I did it, and I just want to share my experience because I feel like I did university in a slightly unconventional way. And university was really difficult for me, as I've mentioned, and I think a lot of that was down to really comparing myself to other people, and kind of thinking, oh, I'm not normal, like I'm not going about it the normal way. And so I think if I had been able to see a little bit of kind of diversity in the way that people went about university, then it might have made me feel a little bit better. So that's kind of why I'm posting this, because yeah, it's not a top tips video, it's not a tutorial. I'm not saying that you should do it this way. I'm literally just going to share my experience. That being said, if you do have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments and I will make sure I reply to all of the comments. Anyway, let's get on with it. So for a little bit of context, I went to an all-girls private school my whole life, which I absolutely loved, but because of that, it was very much expected that you do your GCSEs, you do your A-levels and you go to university. And the reason that I'm mentioning that is because that kind of pressure was quite instilled in me, and in everybody, I think, in my year. I don't know if that would have been the same had I been at a different school, so which is just why I wanted to mention it. I think it probably would have been, but I thought it was worth mentioning. And that's definitely not to say that my school wouldn't have been supportive of other options, it's just that other options weren't really talked about very much. So anyway, when I was in school in sixth form, I was offered a place at Surrey University on their Theatre Studies BA Honours degree course. It was a conditional offer. I needed to get ABB grades to be able to go to that uni. That was my first choice, university. I can't remember where my backup was. But anyway, I chose theatre studies just because drama was my favourite subject at school and I really loved doing musical theatre outside of school. I didn't really have any idea of what I wanted to do once I left university, but I just picked the course based on what I enjoyed. And actually, loads of people tell you not to do that, but I think that's ridiculous, because how are you supposed to know? How many people can pick a career at 17 or 18 or younger and actually see it through? It just doesn't really happen. It does sometimes. If you've got a real gut feeling, then go with it. But if you don't, just do what you like. At least that way you're less likely to end up in a job that you don't enjoy. Well, that's what I think anyway. But anyway, so to get into Surrey, I needed those ABB grades, which for me, it wasn't a given, but it was also not impossible. And I worked really hard with my revision, but basically the self-doubt kind of started to creep in and I thought that I really wasn't going to do very well. And so I told myself that I needed a backup plan. I was definitely still on the fence about whether or not that course was actually the right thing for me to do anyway. So I decided that if I didn't get into university, I was going to get a job just front of house at the Theatre Royal in Norwich, which is like our big theatre, and I was going to audition for shows and just be in more shows and generally just enjoy myself, spend a year earning some money, gaining some experience and just kind of getting on with things, and then I'd figure it out from there. Figure out what I was going to do with my life, basically. That was my plan for the year. In the UK, we have a website called UCAS, which is basically the website that you can go to apply to universities and manage your applications. And it often updates the morning of results day before you can actually go in and get your results. So it can't tell you what your results are, but it can tell you whether you've been accepted or rejected from your universities. So results day rolls around and I log into UCAS expecting to see that I've been rejected from the university and feel disappointed. But then when I logged in, it turned out I'd been accepted by the university and I felt disappointed. Yeah. So I was just really confused. I think basically what had happened was that I'd worked so hard on finding a plan B that I'd been happy with because of concerns that I wasn't going to get the grades to get into uni, that I had actually kind of devised a plan that would still allow me to kind of learn and grow and have a nice time. And And I think maybe I just wasn't ready to go yet. So the idea that all of a sudden I was going to be going to university when in my head that hadn't been what was happening really, really stressed me out. And I remember being so worried about what my parents and my family might think, and my school might think, and my teachers and my friends. But in the end, I just went with my gut instinct and I deferred my place. So if you don't know, deferring a place basically just means that you put it off for a year. So you say, yes, thank you, I would like a place at your university, can I take it next September? In all honesty, I don't remember much of the following year. I know that I got a job at the theatre. I was doing front of house, which I really enjoyed. I was in lots more shows. I also actually did a music production and performance diploma course thing at my local college. And somewhere in that year, and this is the bit that annoyingly I can't remember very well, I decided I wasn't going to go to Surrey, but instead I moved out of my family home and in with friends, and I got myself a place at my local university, which is the UEA, or the University of East Anglia, to study media studies. I knew that the UEA was a good university. I just never really considered it because it was so close to home, and in my head university was something that you had to go away for. Which is silly looking back, but that's just what I thought. So I'd never really considered the uni near me at all. So anyway, Freshers Week rolls around, and I've never really been one for clubbing. I get really anxious with like really loud noises and crammed spaces and strangers, and it's just not really for me. I have to really be in the mood and with a really good group of people. And obviously at Freshers, the kind of idea is that you don't really know the people that you're going out with. So yeah. I was also going through a really horrible breakup at the time and I was just miserable, and so the idea of going and pressing myself up against sweaty strangers just wasn't really ideal. So I didn't really go to Freshers, and I think that was kind of the beginning of me feeling quite isolated from the rest of the university, because the first time that I really met anybody on my course was when I turned up for the first course day. And the people who I did meet on the course were nice and the lecturers were nice, but I just never really gelled properly. I actually attribute some of that to the fact that I was in my hometown. I didn't really feel the need to go out and make friends and sort of build a new life, because I already had a life and I already had friends. And I think that was a downside actually of going to uni so close to home. But that being said, I definitely could have made more effort than I did. So for the first year I went to the majority of my lectures. I did everything kind of how you should. Didn't really hand in very many formative assignments. So you have formative assignments and summative assignments, and summative assignments are the ones that count. I didn't really hand in very many formative assignments, but that tended to be because I was already making a start on the summative assignments, if you see what I mean. So, but I never really got pulled up on it, and I always went to the lecturers if I needed any help, blah blah blah. Over the summer of that year, I started to have some real bad anxiety attacks, and to the point where it was groups of people I didn't know and rooms full of people I didn't know that really stressed me out. And I felt at university like, because I hadn't stayed in halls, all these people had made these super close, tight-knit bonds with each other because they were always on site, and I hadn't, because I'd been working or I'd been with friends or with family or whatever it was. So I found those rooms full of people really quite intimidating by the beginning of second year, which is really strange because nothing had ever really happened to make me feel that way. I think that's just how mental health kind of works sometimes. I'd moved jobs by this point, hadn't I? Oh, so really early into first year I decided that I didn't want to work at the theatre anymore, and instead I was going to go and work at a department store called Gerald's on their Clinique counter. I thought that it would be a fun new experience, and I've always liked makeup and skincare, so I decided to give that a go. So that's where I'd been. And then about a year later I decided that I actually wanted to be self-employed for a bit, so I signed up to be a tutor, a maths and English tutor, and I started doing that through second year. And basically I started off kind of thinking that I wouldn't have that much success with it because I'd never done anything like that before. I didn't have any experience in education or with children or anything really, but I got my first few students and they gave me really good reviews, and I loved it, and I loved preparing the lessons, and I loved watching the kids' confidence grow and watching their skills grow. And basically I ended up having at one point 25 students a week, some of them on more than 1 hour a week, and basically I had given myself a full-time job. That actually did impact YouTube as well, because I stopped uploading because between uni and my new full-time job I was so busy. But the thing is, tutoring was brilliant. Like, if you're looking at going to university, I would definitely recommend that you kind of have a little look into that sort of thing, because it pays relatively well. You can take on just as much or as little as you want to, and it's really, really flexible. All the parents are lovely and all the kids are lovely. The only thing is that you probably need to have a car. So I think because I was feeling really anxious, I basically just threw myself into work. I felt like I was really kind of making a difference, I suppose, which is something that I really wasn't getting at university. One of the things that I found really frustrating at uni was the fact that basically, so the way it works is that you have 8 or 9 week terms usually, or semesters, and at the end of that semester you have to write an essay, normally one essay, and each week is on a different subject, and at the end you have to write something about 1 week's worth. And that was really frustrating, because it was like, well, I'm coming in here, I'm absolutely tiring myself out, I'm giving myself anxiety attack after anxiety attack. Sometimes I'd literally go in, take one step into the room, or sometimes not even be able to go in the room, just literally look through the door and have to turn around and go home because I just couldn't face it. And I'm aware that that sounds really silly, but I just couldn't do it. But I really just didn't want that to be my life. I was like, I don't want to just sit in my room all day and do nothing. So I was finding it really frustrating that you had to put in so many hours and so much work, and then literally 80% of it you wouldn't use at all. And I didn't feel like I was actually learning anything either. I think that was the thing. And maybe it's just the course that I chose to do, or I don't know really, but for me personally, I really didn't find it to be particularly beneficial. And so by Christmas, second year, I never went back to another lecture. I still handed in all the work, I read the PowerPoints from home, and I chose what I was going to write my essay on, and then I did all my own research and I wrote the essays, and most of the time I got firsts or 2-1s in everything. So I was happy. I got the occasional 2-2, but overall I was just a bit confused, because I feel like if I could do that without having to attend the lectures, what's the point in the lectures? Like, I went to a lecture once that was about web design, and I know a little bit about web design, and literally when I got there we had a cover teacher and he didn't even know how to turn on the computer. It was actually ridiculous. He was just reading off a sheet, and I was thinking, hang on a minute, I'm getting myself into nearly 50 grand's worth of debt here to turn up, and this teacher actually doesn't know how to turn on a computer. And there was a couple of times when you'd turn up for lectures and you'd be there for 20 minutes and then the lecturer would go, I can either get a bus now or in half an hour and I'm pretty much done, so shall we just go? And it's like, well, I've just walked nearly an hour to get here and you can't be bothered, so everybody now has to leave, and I'm paying so much money, and I just wasn't really getting anything out of it. So basically I decided, I nearly quit. I really nearly quit. I thought about quitting a lot, and then I decided that I wasn't going to quit. I was going to see it through, but that it just wasn't going to be my #1 priority. And that's kind of how it was for the rest of it. I literally didn't socialise really with the people at uni, and that wasn't because they weren't lovely people. I was just busy and I was just nervous and I was just doing other things. But I did my tutoring, and that kind of grew and grew and grew, and then eventually I was one of the top maths and English tutors in Norfolk based on kind of reviews and experience hours and things like that, which was really cool. But that meant that I was getting so much interest in my tutoring, and it kind of all just went, I just didn't really expect to be working that many hours or be that successful in work when I was still at uni, if you see what I mean. I'm not saying like, oh, I'm the most successful, but like I just expected to be doing a couple of students a week and then kind of leave it at that. But I was literally getting referrals and inquiries come through every day and having to turn people down. And I had made these books and books and books worth of sheets for all different levels, for all different subjects, for loads of different stuff, just to enable me to teach the kids in a way that was really structured. And I kind of started thinking, well, actually it's that syllabus that's doing good things for the kids, it's not necessarily me. It's because of the way that it's all structured and it's all laid out. So maybe I could have somebody else come and do that with some of these other students that if not I'm turning down, because what was being relayed back to me by parents was that a lot of other tutors didn't do maths and English, they only did one or the other. So I kind of had that idea in the back of my mind that maybe at some point I would find somebody else to kind of not employ but work alongside, where they teach some lessons as well and I provide them with the lesson plans. And then basically at the beginning of third year, my mental health was a lot worse. Third year is a bit of a step up anyway, and then basically my family started having some problems and everything was just a bit much. And so I was like, right, well that's the answer then, isn't it? Because it means that I don't have to give up all these students and leave them without a tutor. I don't have to give up all these students and leave myself with no money. So I started to move some of the students over to another girl that I found who was lovely and great, and I just kept my year 11s because by this point I've been tutoring them for over a year and they were so close to their GCSEs that I just kept my year 11s and a couple of my homeschool kids. At this point as well, I had gone into the university and had a few meetings with my personal advisor. I'd explained to her that my mental health was really not very good and that literally every time I went to go into university I would have an absolute meltdown and it would literally tire me out and render me completely incapable of anything for about 48 hours. And she said to me, okay, as long as you're still doing your work, obviously we'd prefer if you came into university, but at the end of the day, if you're still doing your work, you're still handing things in, you're still getting good grades, then you do you, basically. And my personal advisor was able to figure out which modules needed exams or group work and put me on other modules basically, which was so helpful because it really just minimised the kind of opportunity for that situation to arise. But I did make sure throughout the entire experience that I was communicative with all of my lecturers and all of my seminar leaders and my personal advisor and my head of my school. That's what they call like different sections of the university and everything. Like, I didn't drop off the face of the earth. I made it very clear kind of what my intentions were, and I just made sure that I got the work in on time. I didn't take any extensions. I didn't ever hand anything in late. Then it was time to write my dissertation. So we had a separate dissertation advisor. I don't know if it's the same everywhere. And my dissertation advisor was really helpful. And I wrote my dissertation about Jane the Virgin, which is a show on Netflix, which I absolutely love. And that was really good because I got to choose kind of what I was going to do. But I did quite enjoy the dissertation to an extent. I enjoyed planning the dissertation because I think you get to write it about whatever you want to write about. But what really wound me up about the dissertation is the fact that they put so much emphasis on it and they put so much pressure on you over this dissertation. Mine was 12,000 words. That's so many words. And I was working on Christmas Day on my dissertation because I was so busy. All the students had mocks at the time, so I had so many lessons. Everything was going wrong. So I ended up doing most of my dissertation on Christmas Day. And the thing that annoyed me about it was I should have done my research, but I didn't. I found out later that the dissertation is worth no more than any other module. And that annoyed me so much because I feel like everybody always talks about your dissertation, everybody bigs up your dissertation so much, but actually it's worth one module. And obviously it's a big task, it's a big writing task, but I just think everybody needs to pipe down. So alongside the dissertation stuff happening, the girl that I had taken on to help me with some of the lessons was also at capacity, and so I started taking on a couple more because we were still getting inquiries, we were still getting friends of the students that we had, or siblings or cousins or whatever it was of the students that we had come through and want lessons. So I took on a few more and it just kind of grew and grew and grew throughout the time that I was at university, to the point where there was me and 8 other tutors going around with my sheets and my lesson plans. And uni at this point really had taken a back seat. Like, I did not care about uni. And then basically, yeah, I just finished. I finished university, everything was fine. I didn't go to graduation because I went to Disney World instead. And that was pretty much it. And it was a really hard 3 years. And it's so easy to summarise and be like, yeah, well, it's done now. And it is done and I'm so happy. But I did find it really difficult. But what I'm saying is, if you're finding university difficult, find other things that you excel at and don't make it your life. Because I think if I hadn't started tutoring and I hadn't started thinking about other things, I would have gone mad over the last few years, because I just felt like such a failure at university, not grades wise, but just in terms of feeling like I really didn't fit in very well. And that just wasn't very nice, really. I'm not trying to tell anybody how they should do their university experience. I'm definitely not saying that you should start your own business while you're at uni. But at the end of the day, like, what I am saying is just make sure that if you're not happy at university, you've got other things going on, and that you don't have to live in a bubble. And also, you don't have to wait until you leave university for your like career to begin. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be doing tutoring for the rest of my life, but I have a lot of kind of leadership experience now, and a lot of just experiences that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't kind of branched out a little bit. And I wish in a lot of ways that I'd been able to do university the same way as everybody else. I feel like I really missed out on some opportunities by not staying in halls, by not going out all the time and things like that. But at the end of the day, I didn't want to do it. So you can't regret it, can you? There's no point. But anyway, I graduated with a 2-1, and I'm done now, and I've got a degree. And to be honest, I don't know if I'm ever going to use the degree again. I haven't gone and got a graduate job because I don't want one. I don't know if I will ever use my degree, really, but I've got one now. And I've also got 50 grand's worth of debt. Don't even talk to me about that. At the end of the day, I think actually I learned more about myself through not enjoying uni than I learned at uni. And I think that's one of the things that kind of everybody forgets, is that university is such that those years, even if you're not at uni, they are a pivotal kind of moment in your life. For the first time, you've really got kind of freedom, and you're an adult and you can make your own choices, and nobody can really pull you up for it. And I think whatever you choose to do, you should just make sure that it's as fulfilling as it can be for you, and that you know that you're giving yourself time to relax, which I didn't do, but also that you are really exploring every possibility. Because if you leave university and you have to go and get a 9-to-5 job, if you've got an idea of something that you want to try out, university is the perfect time to do it. I think that, yes, take university seriously, but don't take it so seriously that you don't explore other avenues, because it is not the only thing going on in your life. And yes, that is my university experience. Closed, chapter over, never have to talk about it again, except in the comments if you ask me any questions. And that is pretty much everything I have to say. I know that the day that I'm filming this is actually results day, which is funny because that's just a coincidence. So if you got A-level results and you're watching this off the back of that, then I hope you got what you wanted to get. And if not, don't worry about it. Everything will work out. And a few years' time, you will look back at results day and think, oh, how weird would that have been if I'd gone down that path that I thought, because I don't even know what my life would look like now if I'd gone to Surrey. Hit thumbs up if you found this video helpful at all, and obviously don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you soon.
A square with a horn makes you wish you weren't born every time he plays. But with a square in the act, you can set music back to the caveman days. I've heard some corny birds who tried to sing.